Innovations. Bid'ah. Let's see why we're here. So, we started talking about the meaning of the second Shahada. We started by talking about prophethood. Mentioned the attributes of a prophet. Then we talked about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and some chapters there. Then we looked at essential convictions. These are things that we must believe in because the Prophet told us, alayhi salatu wassalam. So we spoke about all these things here. After we finished that, then we started talking about the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we talked about Ahlul Sunnah, and we talked about the Mujtahids and Muqallids, the Ijma', the Salaf, the Sahaba, all of that under the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Under Sahaba, we talked about the best companions, we talked about the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and we talked about the caliphs, the first four caliphs. And this section could use some expansion, like to have a list of the actual ranks of the Sahaba. What are those ranks? What's their sequence and what's their names? May Allah enable us to compile it. Ameen. Like you have the people of Al-Badr, and you have other companions. Then we want to talk about sin, because that is a subject in the books of Aqidah. And then we said all what we said here. This talk here took us to talk about the Khawarij and the Mu'tazilah, and the issue of major and minor sins. That's what's included under this chapter here. The discussion about the Khawarij, the discussion about the Mu'tazilah, and the discussion about major and minor sins. So we completed all of that. Why is there discussion about Khawarij and Mu'tazilah? I'll remind you quickly. The Khawarij, the outlaws, they came out first. They said, if you commit a big sin, then you committed blasphemy. And some of them said, if you commit any sin, you committed blasphemy. So that's wrong. So we need to talk about that issue there under the chapter of sins, that this is sin, that's not blasphemy. And the Mu'tazila said, if you commit a major sin, then you stop being a believer, but you don't become a disbeliever. So they said, the major sin will take you out of faith without putting you into blasphemy. That's wrong. So we talked about them there too. Yani, the creed of Ahlul Sunnah is that the major sin does not render a person a disbeliever, as long as he doesn't legalize it. That's what they say. That means he's going to believe about himself that he's a sinner. Okay. So we finished that. So after sin, the worst sin is blasphemy. But before talking about blasphemy, there is an area we have to cover, which fades into blasphemy, or as they say, segues into it, which is the issue of heresy. Heresy means a wrong conviction, heretical conviction, but might not reach the level of blasphemy. Would be wrong though. So let's see what we have here. The false convictions are sometimes called bid'ah, innovation or heresy. Yani, that is their name. That's the original meaning of this word religiously. Bid'ah. Bid'ah is the heresy. Innovation in creed. Innovation in creed. So one word would be heresy. Heresy means contrary to orthodoxy. Orthodoxy here means the sunnah. Like Ibn Hajar said in the explanation of An-Nukhbah, أو بدعته, or a reporter may be criticized for his bid'ah, his heresy. وهي اعتقاد ما أحدث على خلاف المعروف عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, which is believing in something innovated in defiance of what is known from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Against yani على خلاف المعروف. Let's say against. Maybe defiance too strong of a word there. Which is believing in something innovated against what is known from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not because of obstinacy, not due to obstinacy. That's a kufr. That's a type of blasphemy, the blasphemy of obstinacy. That's when the person say, I just don't care. So if it's right, it's wrong, doesn't matter to me. So that's blasphemy. So not because of obstinacy he is deviated in this way. Rather by some type of fallacy. بل بنوع شبهة لا بمعاندة بل بنوع شبهة. Not by obstinacy, but by some type of fallacy. So he has a mistake. Might reach the level of kufr or might not reach the level of kufr. But it won't be lower than the level of a major sin. Heresy and creed is major sin. We'll see what we have here. Examples include the claim of things happening in beginningless eternity. Examples include the claim of things happening in beginningless eternity. Things happening in beginningless eternity. So that's a bid'ah, that's a kufr one, that's blasphemy. Because no one is beginningless but the Creator. And there were not things happening in beginningless eternity. So whoever believes like that, like Ibn Taymiyyah, then that's a bid'ah, a kufr one. Or that tawassul by the prophets and the pious after their deaths or during their lives, but not in their presence. That tawassul by the prophets and the pious after their deaths or during their lives, but not in their presence, being forbidden. So this specific condition here. Now we're not going to talk about what tawassul is. So if you know what tawassul is, then the creed, for someone to have a creed about tawassul, that making tawassul by prophets or pious people after they have passed away is forbidden. Or even if they're alive, but they are absent from you, that this is forbidden. This is a deviated creed here. The first to innovate this is Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani, who died in the year 728. This issue of tawassul. That's why it's not in the early books of Aqidah, the issue of tawassul, because it wasn't an issue. You would find so many things in the books of Aqidah. Their point is to be direct response to some fallacy or blasphemy or heresy. So the scholar would say, we believe in such and such. Why are you saying that? Yani, for example, they would say, ability is with the action. Why are they saying that? That's in response to something. Now we need to talk about tawassul these days because of what Ibn Taymiyyah innovated and then the Wahhabis took it from him and propagated. So they have a bid'ah there. That's two we just mentioned here. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani also said in Fath al-Bari, وَالْبِدْعَةُ أَصْلُهَا مَا أُحْدِثَ عَلَى غَيْرِ مِثَالٍ سَابِقٍ. The original meaning of bid'ah, innovation, is what was done without a previous example. وَتُطْلَقُ فِي الشَّرْعِ فِي مُقَابِلِ السُّنَّةِ. Religiously, its unqualified use refers to what is contrary to the prophetic way. فَتَكُونُ مَذْمُومَةً. So it would be blameworthy. So here, تُطْلَقْ فِي الشَّرْعِ فِي مُقَابِلِ السُّنَّةِ. It's unqualified use. That means when you just say it openly without qualification, al-bid'ah, then the first meaning that goes to it is what is contrary to the prophetic way. So it would be blameworthy. One of the benefits of this chapter here in particular is the presentation of the information for you. Because what we usually learn from the Shaykh when addressing the issue of bid'ah is that there are two types of bid'ah. We say fundamentally and from the beginning, there are two types of innovations, good innovations and bad innovations. That is proven by the hadith such and such. And as for this other hadith, doesn't mean that every innovation is bad. Examples of good innovations are like this, and examples of bad innovations are like this. And then, when we talk about examples of bad innovations, we would say, like the heretical convictions. We would say, like the heretical convictions, and then we would name some other things. And like this, and like this. So that's how the Shaykh taught us. And this approach is also in response to the existence of the Wahhabiyah. So the case needed to be clarified in this way. But the Shaykh did a big job about that. So here we're taking a different approach, which is actually, let's go back to what is the original religious usage of bid'ah and start from there. And then see how does good innovation fit from there. So that's the meaning of tutlaq here. Its unqualified use refers to what is contrary to the prophetic way. So it would be blameworthy. So that's the first meaning. What tahqiq? But what is exact? So that's how Shaykh starts here. Shaykh starts with the tahqiq of the case. That's how he taught us originally. That's how we do all our lessons. The way the book is starting here is like how Ibn Hajar started here. أنها إن كانت مما تندرج تحت مستحسن في الشرع فهي حسنة وإن كانت مما تندرج تحت مستقبح في الشرع فهي مستقبحة وإلا فهي من قسم المباح. What is exact is that if it is included under what is deemed good in the sacred law, then it is good. And if it is included under what is deemed ugly in the sacred law, it is deemed ugly. Or else, it is a type of permitted thing. So that's the meaning of what some of them said when they said, a thing is not bad just because it's a bid'ah. They're looking at it from that here, this more open view here, perspective here. And there is no contradiction between these two. So I think that's clear. If you have a question, feel free, please. وقد وقد تنقسم إلى الأحكام الخمسة. It could even be divided into the 5 judgments. Doesn't need to be big letters there. So we have some footnotes. So what is exact? Footnote. There are 2 types of innovations. That's what's exact. In the explanation of At-Tahawi, he mentioned the bad innovation first. That's the Shaykh. The Shaykh mentioned the bad innovation first. In Sarih al-Bayan, he mentioned the good innovation first. So these are different books of his in which he has a chapter about bid'ah and how he approached it in those different books. The Shaykh said that the examples of both types are numerous. The first is the innovation of misguidance that opposes the Quran and the Sunnah. The second is the innovation of guidance that complies with the Quran and the Sunnah, according to the assessment of the people of knowledge. So which one should we start with? Here he mentioned the bad one first, then the second one is the good one. So Shaykh did it both ways. So what is exact is that if it is included under what is deemed good in the sacred law, then it is good. Footnote. The Quranic evidence for good innovations is his saying, وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا مَا كَتَبْنَاهَا عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ رِضْوَانِ اللَّهِ. We created in the hearts of those who followed him compassion. Who's he? Jesus. We created in the hearts of those who followed him compassion, mercy, and monasticism that they innovated. That means they innovated a practice of being monks. That's explicit there. وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا, and a monasticism that they innovated. And this came in a context of praise. It's not a bad innovation there. We created in the hearts of those who followed him compassion, mercy, and monasticism that they innovated. Or else it's going to be what they call whiplash. How that's bad? Just like that. Compassion and mercy, and something horrible too. We did not ordain it upon them. They only did it for the acceptance of Allah. This verse praises the believers from the nation of Jesus because they were people of compassion and mercy, and because they innovated a monasticism, which was for them to cut themselves off from permissible pleasures above and beyond their refraining from prohibitions. Yani, they were fundamentally avoiding the haram, and above that, they were avoiding permissible pleasures. To the extent that they refrained from marriage and left out delicious food and fancy clothing. Making the afterlife their sole aim. That's what their rahbaniyah was. So one of those was called a rahib, monk. And there are several of them mentioned in some of the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The story of Jurayj, and in the story of the boys who slept in the cave, there's a rahib there in that story. And also in the story of the boy that the king kept attempting to slay, wasn't able to. Yani, the boy who was a magician's pupil, and then he converted. There was a monk in that story too. So Allah is saying, ما كتبناها عليهم إلا ابتغاء رضوان الله. We did not ordain it upon them. They only did it for the acceptance of Allah. Praises them for what they innovated. That, what it means it was innovated, that which was neither documented for them in the Injil, nor was it specified for them by Jesus, meaning they didn't have a hadith from Jesus also about that. Instead, they wanted to amplify their worship of Allah and abandon whatever would distract them from that, such as marriage, spousal support, and family. Now, in the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one might be a Sufi, and he might live like this, but he might get married still, though. These ones were, part of their monasticism was refraining from marriage, but it's not necessarily to tasawwuf that one refrains from marriage. It's not a condition that you refrain from marriage to be a true Sufi. They were Muslims following Islam according to the law of Jesus. They built huts secluded from the towns to dedicate themselves to worshiping Allah. That's American form right there, 1P. I don't prefer it, but I'm going to leave it like that because it's not wrong. Other spots in the book have 2Ps. And I did that on purpose. And what motivated me to do that is the fact that the Quran is revealed according to different dialects and it's all valid. So I didn't have to bind myself to one style, only American style or British style. I could do either way. As long as it's not wrong. That's my concern, as long as it's not wrong. Then there came after them people who imitated them while believing in shirk. Worshipping Jesus and his mother, there's with 2Ps. So that's on purpose. Worshipping Jesus and his mother, but refraining from pleasures and adhering to huts. So just only outwardly, they were practicing this monasticism while they were truly kuffar. Allah said about them, فَمَا رَعَوْهَا حَقَّ رِعَايَتِهَا. They did not observe it, its due observance. Those were the kuffar amongst them. There's summary in the ayah. وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ رَأْفَةً وَرَحْمَةً وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا. We put in the hearts of those who followed him compassion and mercy, and monasticism that they innovated. That's all praise up till there. ما كتبناها عليهم إلا ابتغاء رضوان الله. We didn't ordain it upon them. They only did it for the acceptance of Allah. That's praise right there. فما رعوها حق رعايتها. That comes right after. Here. But they did not observe it. Its due observance. That's the mushriks who came later who were dispraised. So you see how summarized the statement is. One might become confused there because he couldn't conceive the shift. They did not adhere to the monasticism that complied with the law of Jesus as those who preceded them did. It is taken from this verse that if someone does a deed that does not oppose the law and in fact agrees with it, then he has not committed a blameworthy innovation. So this classification is understood from the hadith of the two sheikhs. This classification. Which classification? all of this. Yani, the fact that there is classification and there is good innovation is understood from the hadith of the two sheikhs. From the route of Aisha. You know what understood means? Understood means not stated, it is implied. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. Whoever innovates into this affair of ours, what does not comply with it is rejected. So, this hadith is evidence for the classification we just presented. What classification did we present? We actually presented more than one classification. Which is, you can look at it as being good or bad. Ibn Hajar just told us that. You can look at it as being good or bad. Or you could even break it into the 5 judgments. This classification is understood from this hadith of the two sheikhs. The hadith of Aisha. وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ. Okay, so we just had an introduction. Now we want to go further into the meaning of heresy. First meaning of bid'ah is heresy, but bid'ah has a wider application. We just covered that. Now we want to focus more on heresy as a bid'ah. In the hadith of Abu Dawood, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that his nation would be divided into 73 sects. افترقت اليهود 71 فرقة. The Jews divided into 71 sects. وافترقت النصارى 72 فرقة. The Christians divided into 72 sects. وتفترق أمتي 73 فرقة. My nation will divide into 73 sects. كلهم في النار إلا واحدة. All of them are in hell except one. It was then said, O Messenger of Allah, who is saved? He said, ما أنا عليه وأصحابي. The group that is upon what I and my companions are upon. This hadith testifies to the trustworthiness of the companions. And this hadith is evidence that none of the companions lie on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, this hadith about the dividing into 73 groups is evidence for ijma'. This hadith is evidence for the ijma' because it means very clearly there is an ijma'. Whoever goes against the ijma' in this case is bound for hell. He said in another narration, the jama'ah, yani he answered, the jama'ah, all shall be tortured in hellfire except the jama'ah. Yes. Because that's what the hadith says. كلهم في النار إلا واحدة. So what we learned that it doesn't mean all of them deserve hell, although that was circulated amongst us for some time. Rather, what it means is all of them shall be in hell, as it appears. كلهم في النار. There's no ta'wil there. إلا واحدة. Except one group. The jama'ah, which is the jumhur, the majority, as is reinforced by the narration, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ اخْتِلَافًا فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالسَّوَادِ الْأَعْظَمِ. If you see fundamental differences, then adhere to the vast majority. This is not about the fiqh. This is about aqidah. There are a number of people who think that the reference to the majority in these hadiths applies to any isolated city or any isolated community. Always go with the majority. That's not the meaning. This means the majority of Muslims, the majority of those who are attributed to Islam or affiliated with Islam, or those who claim Islam. Not just in your town, all over the world and throughout time. Since the time of the Prophet ﷺ. All of that vast majority there. The Shaykh was among those who said that the 72 deviant factions have all appeared. However, many do not exist anymore. They went extinct. According to Abu al-Muzaffar is the author of At-Tabsiru fi Din, which is a summary of Al-Farqu Bayn al-Firaq, authored about sects, factions. The topic of Islamic sects, it's a sub-branch of the Aqidah knowledge. According to Abu al-Muzaffar, this is his documentation in his book At-Tabsir, there are 20 groups of outlaws or renegades, the Khawarij. Out of how many? 73. The modern ones are the followers of Sayyid Qutb, known as Al-Jama'atul Islamiyah. They are like the old ones called Al-Bayhasiyah, who said that if the ruler rules by other than the law of Allah, he blasphemes, and so do the citizens, whether or not they follow him in that ruling. That's their bid'ah. If, according to them, the ruler judges by other than the law of God, he's a kafir, and all of his citizens, by extension, become kuffar. Unless they rebel against him, then they will retain their faith. That's a bid'ah. This is what makes bad bid'ah many, many more than good bid'ah. The way we usually present the topic of bid'ah, we say there's good innovations, there's bad innovations. There's the hadith about وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every bid'ah is misguidance, and we say it means most of them. But if you look at the way we present the lessons, like most of the examples are good innovations, because we want to prove that there are good innovations, so we produce so many. So how most of the innovations are bad innovations? Just by virtue of all these different heresies. Each heresy, many, many, many heresies, each one is a bid'ah. So the bad bid'ah is way more than the good bid'ah. So according to them, if a ruler rules by other than the law of Allah, he blasphemes, and so do the citizens, whether or not they follow him in that ruling. They believe that whoever rules by other than the rules of Allah, even a single rule, blasphemes, as well as the citizens under him. And they do not exclude anyone except those who rebel. Based on that, they legitimate killing others, as their deeds testify to in Egypt, Algeria, Chechnya, and other places. So that's 20 out of 73. There are 20 groups of deserters, the Rawafid. Whether Zaydiyah, Kaysaniyah, or Imamiyah Shiites. Yani, the Rawafid are the Shiites. Their heresy is called Tashayyu'. Shiism, Tashayyu'. Some people heinously said that Ash-Shafi'i had some Tashayyu'. Hasha. And also, some people claim that Imam An-Nasa'i, rahimahullah, had Tashayyu', and it's not true also. And there are, so that's 40 so far, 20 groups of outcasts or misfits. So I think outcasts better. Mu'tazila, whose sects all charge the other with blasphemy. That's their case. Case of Mu'tazila is heavy infighting, like Wahhabis. Their heresy is called i'tizal. Doesn't need a big I. Which is believing that whoever commits a major sin will be in hell forever. However, neither as a believer nor as a blasphemer, but in a limbo between the two. So that's the i'tizal, this here. So what are Mu'tazila most famous for? Maybe first thing that comes to your mind is denial of Qadar. Yes, they are the Qadariyah. Also might rush to your mind denial of the attributes. Yes, they are closet atheists. But don't forget this one. This is their i'tizal, which is their belief about a limbo status. This is what got them kicked out, yani. So they became the Mu'tazila. And then they added to this bid'ah, more bid'ah, more bid'ah. Plural of bid'ah is bid'ah. Stopping on the ayn. They furthermore added the heresy of denying destiny. Here's a footnote. They also deny the intercession for the sinful believers. And they deny seeing Allah in the afterlife. They actually have many kinds of kufr. Mu'tazila are very bad people. Because they added the heresy of denying destiny, they are called the Qadariyah, the destiny deniers. How Qadariyah means deniers of destiny. Qadariyah means really more the people who believe they make their own destinies. That is the denial of destiny. They believe they make their own destinies. Like they say in the movies all the time, to teach people kufr. So that's why they are the Qadariyah. Yani remember, someone might say, wait a minute, you're the one who confirms the Qadar. Why I'm a Qadari? You should be the Qadari. You're confirming Qadar. He's a denier. He doesn't. Yeah, he's an outright denier of it. He's going to argue with you. So he's going to say, why I should be the Qadari? I'm going to say, because you believe you make your own destiny. Yani, whether he agrees with your words or not, this is the meaning. So, the first to display heresy concerning destiny was Ma'bad al-Juhani in al-Basra. As mentioned in Sahih Muslim from the route of Yahya ibn Ya'mar. But it didn't catch on. Caught on with Wasil. It didn't catch on with Ma'bad, the denial of destiny, nor with Ghailan, but it caught on with Wasil ibn Ata, the Sheikh of the Mu'tazila. Five are Murji'ah, the exonerators, those who believe that no Muslim will be punished. That's heresy. For sure, there will be Muslims who get punished, but they won't be punished forever. And there will be Muslims who deserve to be punished, and they will be forgiven because they were Muslims. Three groups are Najjariyah. And the rest are Bakriyah, Birariyah, Jahmiyah, and Karramiyah. That's a total of 73 groups. And this is a great summary here. It has to be, because this is too lengthy of a subject. This is too lengthy of a subject, so this has to be summarized here. The Sheikh said in the Sirat, there are many factions that have contradicted Islam in meaning, even if they are attributed to Islam, yani affiliated with Islam or assumed to be Muslims, because of their saying the two shahadas and their praying and fasting. But they're not Muslims because they have contradicted the two testifications of faith by believing what negates them. They all adhered to verses that they misunderstood. Yeah, so for the Mushabbiha, they clung to verses that bodify God. For the Khawarij, they clung to verses that name blasphemers major sinners, and therefore called any major sinner a blasphemer. Yani, they flipped it. And the likes of that, thinking that they were upon the truth and thinking that they are upon what agrees with the Quran. They did not know that the Quran has verses that can be taken in different ways. And they took meanings that are not valid to be explanations for those verses. وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ